In the history of The Walking Dead, many of the various showrunners and writers have bounced around different ideas that never made it to screen. This is a common practice in writers' rooms. Sometimes you pitch an idea, it seems like you're sticking with said idea, but then you get a later draft of the script and you realise, I don't know about this idea anymore, let's rework it. Today's deleted scene video is a case of this, so yes, I am stretching the term deleted scene. Sue me. Now, a lot of fans know about this particular planned series of events that never made it to screen. I'm of course talking about that time that the writers almost killed off Carol instead of T-Dog. In Season 3, Episode 4, Killer Within, Theodore Douglas, better known as T, Diggity Dog, unfortunately is bitten whilst heroically locking a gate to stop more walkers from flooding into the area of the prison that our characters inhabit. He and Carol make their way into the tombs with no ammo, and when they reach a dead end with walkers blocking their path, T-Dog sacrifices himself so Carol can live. What a hero. Without the dog, Carol wouldn't have blown up Terminus, and Rick and friends would have been some nice, juicy steaks. T-Dog is the true hero of the show, is all I'm saying. Carol, of course, is missing for a little bit, but eventually is found by Daryl and is A-OK. But this was not always the plan. There was a time when it wasn't T-Dog who would have died in Killer Within, but rather Carol. As I always like to do, I wanted to track down the source of this information. This tidbit was actually revealed by Greg Nicotero in an issue of SFX magazine. Yes, I'm a super nerd, and I tracked down and bought a copy of the issue where Nicotero gives this interview. So, issue 271 of SFX magazine, ignore Jon Snow on the cover there. If you turn to page 71 to 72, Greg Nicotero is asked about Carol's character. For context, this magazine released just before the mid-season finale of Season 6. So this magazine, this article, comes just before the release of No Way Out. So Nicotero and Gale and Hurd are discussing the current feud between Morgan and Carol and the direction that Carol's character is taking, when Nicotero says the following: Melissa McBride is an astonishing actress. Not a lot of people know that when we were shooting Season 3, in the episode where T-Dog died, there was a moment where Carol was going to die in lieu of T-Dog's character. At that point, there was some concern in the writers' room that they didn't know where to take her character. So the fact that Scott Gimple and the writers have been able to craft this amazing journey for her just goes to show that there is a tremendous amount of story to tell for a lot of these characters. We're just hitting the surface. So there we go. That's all that Nicotero spills on this situation. I bought the magazine, the physical copy, just to see if I could find any extra tidbits hidden in there, but unfortunately, no. But it was still an interesting read, and seeing some of the sort of older articles and opinions of the show is actually really interesting. There's this whole surviving a zombie apocalypse guide that a bunch of the cast and crew participate in, basically giving their tips on how to survive a zombie apocalypse. Like, things like that in this magazine were just great to read, so I don't regret the purchase. Now, we are not given detail on how Carol would have died. I don't think it would have played out the same way that T-Dog dies, though. I just don't see Season 3 Carol pinning some walkers and self-sacrificing herself like the way that the dog does. Quite possibly, she was simply meant to be overwhelmed and devoured by some walkers. I have a slight theory, and I know you all love my wacky theories. So in Season 3, Episode 2, Carol asks Glenn to help her obtain a female walker, so she can practice performing a C-section on the walker. Because at this point they were unsure if Herschel would be able to perform the procedure, as he had just had his leg hacked off. This whole Carol learning to do a C-section thing goes nowhere, as Maggie ends up being the one to perform it. Now this scene still does serve some purpose, as of course Andrew is watching both Glenn and Carol from afar, but they could have got that point across without the whole C-section thing. It could have just been Carol and Glenn walking the perimeter. The whole C-section part always felt like something that was meant to be cut and should have been cut, but wasn't. So I think there's a chance that this death swap and this C-section scene are connected in some way. Furthermore, in the SFX article, Nicotero says they did this swap during the filming of Season 3, not the writing process. Now, he may have misspoke, but he makes it sound like this was a last-minute change. So it's quite possible that the filming of Episode 2 took place whilst Carol's death in Episode 4 was still planned. So here is my theory on how I think it was meant to go down. The prison is flooded with walkers. Laurie, Carol, and Carl are cut off from the rest of the group. Laurie's water breaks. They desperately try to get to a secure place where she can give birth, but Carol is attacked by a pack of walkers and is bitten and badly wounded. The three of them make it to the boiler room, but Carol is of course bleeding, and she verbally walks Carl through what he has to do before she eventually bleeds out, or whilst she's bleeding out. Carl at some point puts down Carol, and then delivers his own sister, killing his mother in the process. Now, there's a chance that Maggie was still there as well, and she plays the same role. I just love the idea of Carol walking Carl through the process as she's bleeding out, and Carl being the one to kill his own mother and bring his sister into the world. But I believe, at the very least, something along these lines was meant to happen. We don't know the exact details. If Carol died, it'd be devastating for the group, especially Daryl, but I doubt T-Dog would have made it all the way to Season 11 like Carol did, and head off on a European tour with Daryl in the Dixon spin-off. To be quite honest, T-Dog is the type of character to probably not make it out of the fall of the prison. In a world with no Carol too, I don't see Glenn Mazzara also killing off Andrea. That would leave only Maggie, Beth, and Michonne as the only female characters. So, hell, maybe the alternative universe where Carol does die is a better one. Who knows? So, time for a hot take. Possibly. I think killing T-Dog was the right decision. Would it have been cool to see more of the dog? Yes. But would T-Dog have undergone a more interesting, unique, nuanced transformation like Carol did? I don't think so. Carol is a much more interesting concept of a character. This abuse victim, a mother who's lost her daughter, the lengths she goes and the development she has are just great. Carol does get stale in Season 10 and 11, for sure, but so does Daryl. But before that, I really like her. Personally, I'd have taken her out at the end of the Whisperer War, but I digress. T-Dog is a great dude. He's really caring, as we find out from his backstory. This dude went around saving all the old folks at the start of the outbreak. And they certainly could have given him more layers, an interesting character arc, but at the point of Killer Within, let's not pretend he's anything more than a minor character with a few lines. Despite this, I would have preferred it if T-Dog did have a bit more to do before his death. I think killing him in Season 3 is the right season for him to go, but maybe he could have had a few more things to do before he had to bite the bullet. But maybe you disagree. Maybe you hate Carol, and you would have preferred it if T-Dog lived. Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you to all channel members. We have Baddie, Just Jordan, August Fisher, Rye, Austin Mann, Jesus, Logan Keeley, Corey, Jack Sokel, Charles, Nova, Gamer J, Tyler B, Beatleaf TTV, That Panda, Turbo Clash Tree, Straight Out of Christ the YouTube TV show, Ralph Farhar, Slinger, Nostix212, and Nick Stellino is my gay daddy. And also thank you to all Walker Slayers. These are top tier channel members. We have Red Lemon Cola, Coda Carl, Whatever Comes to Mind, X Orange Crush X, and Gavin Kelly. Cheers. Make sure to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 10k by the end of the year, which is pretty doable, so, hit the button.